There is one type of fan art that you probably seen along the years. All of them sharing the same pose, their eyes empty, holding a knife, and a single strand of hair in their mouth. The original drawing comes from the cover art of the drama CD Yandere no Onnanoko ni Shinohodo Aisarete Nemurenai CD, which means a CD where you're loved to death by a yandere girl so you can't go to sleep, but also commonly known as YandereCD. The character you're seeing is called Nonohara Nagisa. She is the little sister of the protagonist, who supposedly is the listener, and she is infatuated with him. On the drama CD, she was voiced by Yurika. Explaining very quick, her story goes as follows. Nagisa comes back home apologizing to her brother that she didn't prepare food since she was busy with something.
明日からはちゃんと作るからね。別にお兄ちゃんのこと嫌いになったとかそういうわけじゃないよ。本当だよ。
She finds a handkerchief while doing laundry and guesses it belonged to the protagonist's childhood friend by using her sense of smell.
ああ、わかった。綾瀬さんのハンカチでしょ。匂いでわかるもん。それでどうしてお兄ちゃんが持ってるの？
She asks why he has been coming back home late lately.
図書室で勉強？ああ、おとなしそうなクラスメートの人でしょ。知ってる。
And then she gets mad.
あんな人、どうせお兄ちゃんのこと何も分かってないんだから。お兄ちゃんのことを世界で一番よく分かってるのは私なの。他の誰でもない私。
She asks him if he ate already.
そっか、外食したんだ。
But once again, she uses her amazing sense of smell.
やっぱりあの女の匂いがする。お兄ちゃんの嘘つき！ねえ、どうしてそんな嘘つくの？
She reveals why she was too busy to prepare him food.
うん、そうよ。今日お兄ちゃんの晩ご飯を作れなかったのは邪魔な女を片付けてきたから。
When her Oni-chan condemns her, she gets mad again.
お兄ちゃんはそんなこと言わない！私を傷つけるようなこと絶対に言わないもん！そんなのお兄ちゃんじゃない！
But then comes to her own conclusion as to why he would say that.
あいつの料理食べたからきっと毒されちゃってるんだ。だったら早くそれを取り除かないと。
Later, Nagisa brings her Oni-chan some food, and he is unable to oppose her.
その足じゃ満足に逃げられないと思うけど、今日は豪勢に作ってみたよ。
She then force feeds him her cooking to clean his insides of the other girl's cooking.
ね、食べてよ！食べなさいよ！私が食べてって言ってるのよ！どうして食べないの？
After feeding him everything, she asks if her cooking is better than the other girl.
大丈夫、怒ったりしないって。正直なお兄ちゃんの感想が聞きたいだけ。
But when her Oni-chan gives her an honest opinion, she does get mad, and then she grabs her knife.
もういい。こうすれば、もう誰にも邪魔されないんだ。ずっとずっと、一緒にいようね。お兄ちゃん！
And that's how it ends. It gets chaotic really fast, and maybe because of that, besides the illustration parodies, this drama CD also received a lot of dialogue parody videos in Niconico Douga. The first one ever made was done just a few days after CDs were sold non-officially in Comic Cat 73 at the end of December 27. In a video called I Try Making Idol Master's Yukiho into a yandere little sister, as a sort of same voice actress joke at the time.
知ってる。でもあの人っておとなしいっていうより暗いよね。あんな人と話してたらお兄ちゃんまで暗い性格になっちゃうよ。
But it was only a few months later that the fad truly exploded, at one point having around 30 videos of it posted every single day. As of today, if you check the tag, there's about 3,200 videos uploaded. The most common type of video is where the uploader will take a character and have them have a conversation with the yandere little sister. Here's some dialogue examples.
いつも私の晩ご飯楽しみにしてくれてたんだもん。
違う、大嫌いだ。
お兄ちゃんのこと嫌いになったとかそういうわけじゃないよ。本当だよ。どっちかっていうとなんでもない。 何も言ってないよ。本当に何でもないから。
聞きたい。
そうだ。お昼のお弁当はどうだった？まずい。いつもと味付けを変えてみたんだけど、美味しくない？前よりまずい。それに、まずい。そっか。よかった。ごめん。まずい。口に合わなかったらどうしようって思ってたんだけど。唐揚げまずい。これで一安心ね。こんなに好きなのに。まずい。口に合わなかったらどうしようって思ってたんだけど。これで一安心ね。
おい頼むよ。もう4時だよ。明日7時起きだよ。3時間って。
もうそんなの気にしなくていいよ。家族なんだからね。
そういう問題じゃねえだろ。
このハンカチお兄ちゃんのじゃないよね。誰の？
これは全てひなたくんだ。それはみんな勝手に。
わかった。スミキランのハンカチでしょ。すみません。匂いでわかるもん。
すごいよ。大正解。さすが超高校級のストーカー。
それで図書室で勉強？
違う。
ああ。
違うぞ。
おとなしそうなクラスメートの人でしょ。
違う。
知ってる。
違う。
綾瀬さんと一緒に行こうって言うし。
そんなの関係ないって言ってるでしょ。
あんな人どうせお兄ちゃんのこと何も分かってないんだから。お兄ちゃんのことを世界で一番よく分かってるのは私なの。他の誰でもない私。
嘘だ。笑った顔でごまかしてるだけだ。曖昧なままにしておきたいだけなんだ。
ごめん。一人でご飯食べたの？
そうだが。
一人で食べに行ったんだ。
本当だぞ。
やっぱりあの女の匂いがする。お兄ちゃんの嘘つき！で料理食べさせてもらったの？それはよかったね。
さあみんな、ここから逃げるんだ。
お兄ちゃんはきっといつか絶対私の気持ちを分かってくれるって思ってたから。
知らないし知りたくもないね。
ずっと我慢してたんだよ。
そんなよっぽど暇みたいだね。
どうして？
なんだよ。
どうしてそんなこと言うの？
真面目な声を出すな。息を吹きかけるな。顔が近いんだよ。気色悪い。
お兄ちゃんはそんなこと言わない。私を傷つけるようなこと絶対に言わないもん。そんなのお兄ちゃんじゃない。
相殺。攻撃に攻撃を重ねると相殺できる場合がある。
ああ、そっか。
Sometimes the conversation partner wouldn't even be human.
お兄ちゃん、まだ起きてる
？Sometimes edits of TV commercials that were already memes.
おとなしそうなクラスメートの人でしょ？知ってる。でもあの人っておとなしいっていうより暗いよね。あんな人と話してたら、お兄ちゃんまで暗い性格になっちゃうよ。
And depending on who the conversation partner is, the video would be tagged as Little Sister, Run Away! Series, which reflected the viewer's feelings thinking that the yandere little sister was in danger.
気にするよ。だってお兄ちゃん、いつも私の晩ご飯楽しみにしてくれてたんだもん。
でもちょうどいいかもな。俺が作った。俺がご飯を作った。や
はりお主は爽快屋の忍者。
さて、理解したか？どけ。
逃げないと。
動き回るのは勝手だが、不用意に動くと死ぬぞ。
Of course, there are plenty of video edits that aren't just dialogue parodies.
ブロリーの狙いはやんでくれの女の子なのだからな。かわいい。よく化け物。血祭りにあげたと褒めてやりたいところだ。
これで一安心ね。お兄ちゃんにすり寄ってくる意地汚い幽霊がみんなもういないのよ。
Nagisa, the yandere little sister, managed to become a big meme in the website. But now I want to go back to talking about the series itself. The YandereCD that you saw was the second CD released under the Edge Records Nemurenai Series, aka the Can't Sleep series. where they act scenarios that doesn't let the protagonist, aka the listener, to go to sleep. An idea created as a sort of joke because of the existence of CDs that aim to help the listener to go to sleep. And they took the opposite chaotic approach. It was not necessarily because it was scary. For example, the first drama CD they ever released was called a CD where you're given orders by your older sisters so you can't go to sleep, and the third one is a CD where you're being clinged to by younger sisters so you can't go to sleep. The topic of yanderes was chosen because of alcohol apparently, telling the producer to not do a tsundere CD but a yandere one. Because at the time, there was a yandere boom happening amongst otaku, which started with series like School Days and Shuffle. And thus, this became the first yandere-themed drama CD, as well as becoming one of works that helped push further the yandere boom. The CD was officially released in January 11, 2008, a few days after Comic Cat 73, and it garnered enough attention that stores became flooded with pre-orders of the CD for the official release. Now, you might have noticed that on the other covers there are several characters per CD, and YandereCD was no exception. Besides Nonohara Nagisa, YandereCD featured two other characters, Koumoto Ayase and Kashiwagi Sonoko. Let's talk about Koumoto Ayase first. She is the childhood friend of the protagonist who lives next door. She is voiced by Hirohashi Ryo. Her story starts with her coming to the protagonist's house to cook for him.
ごめんね、遅くなって。今すぐ夕ご飯の準備するから。
She starts reminiscing about the past.
あの日から、私たちずっと一緒だったよね。幼稚園に行くときも、学校に行くようになっても、小さいときは一緒にお風呂にも入ってたよね。
And talks about her place being next to him.
あなたに思いを打ち明けたとき、もしダメだったら死んじゃうって思ってた。だって、私の居場所はいつもあなたの隣だけだもの。
She shows that she's jealous about him talking to other girls.
ねえ、どうしてさっきから他の女の子のことばかり話すの？あなたの彼女は私でしょ？他の女の子なんてどうでもいいじゃない。怒ってないわよ。
And thinks that he only needs her by his side.
私はあなたの彼女だもん。他の女なんていらないよね。
The protagonist receives a call from Nagisa, prompting Ayase to leave.
あの女、まだ動けるのか。ちょっと待ってて。私が様子見てくる。
When returning, he is scared of her and tries to run away.
どうして後ろに下がるの？ねえ、待ってよ。
And to stop him, she makes use of her weapon of choice, hammer and long nails.
五寸釘ってすごいよね。人の体でも簡単に止めておくことができるんだもん。
She reveals that Nagisa had confronted her about the relationship.
私に向かって、あんたなんかにお兄ちゃんは渡さないって言うのよ。
And that she had nailed her down inside her room.
まさか右手にあんな大穴開けてまで逃げようとするなんて思ってもみなかった。女の執念って怖いよね。
And after the protagonist received the call, she went back to give the finishing blow.
心臓にも五寸釘を何本も何本も何本も何本も何本も何本も何本も何本も。
She also revealed the protagonist's classmate was also nailed down in her room.
あの子ったら、私がお仕置きするたびにすごい声で泣きわめくの。助けて、助けてって。ブスは死ね、ブスは死ねって。
And now, having the protagonist just to her, she takes care of him.
じゃあ、その耳も固定しちゃおっか。
And so, they happily live together as a couple.
た、す、け、て？あ、うん。助けてあげる。あなたに近づく女たちから、あなたを守ってあげる。
You might have noticed here that every story is a parallel universe from each other. In Nagisa's story, she kills Ayase. In Ayase's story, she kills Nagisa. And that's pretty much how this drama CD works. Also unrelated, Ayase has a line that says,
近親相関は犯罪なのにね
but apparently it isn't? Well, it seems to depend. But anyways, next we have the protagonist, quiet classmate Kashiwagi Sonoko, who is voiced by Kawaragi Shiho. Her story begins with her talking to the protagonist.
私はクラスの子にいじめられていて公園で泣いていたんですよその時にあなたは慰めてくれましたよね
He helped her many times when they were younger.
またクラスメートにいじめられていた私をあなたが助けてくれましたよね
Eventually, they would form a relationship. But seeing that the protagonist was nice to other girls, she feared he would fall in love with Ayase.
いつかあなたが河本さんのことを好きになってしまうんじゃないかって
She confronted Ayase behind the school, saying she was already the protagonist's girlfriend.
そうしたらあの人私のことを泥棒猫って言うんです
Sonoko then kills Ayase with her weapon of choice, a shovel used for gardening purposes, since she was part of the gardening club.
今は多分校庭の花壇の肥料になってると思いますよ
Regarding Nagisa, she's still alive, but since the protagonist stopped going home, she accused Sonoko of locking him up.
監禁なんてしてませんよねあなたはただ私と一緒にいてくれるだけなのに
Nagisa got inside her house and looked everywhere for her Oni-chan, but could not find him.
本当にあなたを探していたのかしら目の前にあなたがいても全然気づかなかったですもんね
In the end, it's revealed that she did confine him due to his womanizing ways, and along the way, he had died, and she uses his skull as a flower pot.
あなたを養分に育ったこの花は一体どんな綺麗な花を咲かせてくれるのかしら
She was talking to the skull the whole time. The protagonist was dead from the very beginning. And these are the 3 girls, their stories, and their weapons that appears on the YandereCD. However, of course, when something gets popular, usually more of it is made.
エッジレコーズが送る眠れない CD シリーズ第4弾ヤンデレの女の子に死ぬほど愛されて眠れない CD ギャー好評発売中逃げちゃダメなんだよお兄ちゃん
So the 4th CD of the Nemurenai series was another YandereCD released a few months after the first one. 4 new stories which were a bit more elaborate. Every story got pre-stories posted on Edge Records' official website, which sets the stage for the CD. Also, according to the producer, they aimed to make each consecutive story scarier than the last one. I'll go through them quickly compared to the girls from the first CD. Listening to them by yourself, in full, of course, would be better. If you're interested, I'm sure you'll be able to find them. So the first track of Yandere no Onnanoko ni Shinu Hodo Aisarete Nemurenai CD, yeah! It starts with this girl, Ayanokouji Sakuya, who is voiced by Mizuhashi Kaori. She is an extremely rich, spoiled, bratty young lady who has a crush towards the protagonist. And you're hearing this and thinking, sounds like she will be a tsundere.
あなたのことそんなわけないじゃない
And you're right, she has a hard time being honest due to her upbringing.
私はあなたのことが大嫌いでもないわ
Her track even starts with her giving the protagonist a lap pillow.
庶民のくせに私の膝枕を堪能するなんて分不相応にも程があるわよ恥を知りなさい恥を
So the protagonist awoke at her mansion because she decided he is to live there, so she can't spend more time with him. The yandere factor comes when she confines the protagonist into the room with her weapon of choice, her trained war dog.
逃げようとさえしなければこの子は全然危険じゃないから可愛がってあげてね
And when other girls come for his rescue,
侵入者なんだメス犬どもかもう嗅ぎつけてくるとはね 殺しさえしなければどんな風に扱ってもいいけど。
In the end, she uses the power of money to have the protagonist all to herself, and we don't talk about what happened to the other girls.
お金で買えないものなんてないの。お金で人生だって買えるのよ。例えば、あなたの。ね。
The second story stars Nanamiya Iori, voiced by Kono Hiromi. She's a shrine maiden who fell in love with the protagonist at first sight, and the protagonist as well was interested in her to the point he confessed. The problem is that she had her heart fully devoted to God.
幼い頃から神に身も心も捧げると教えられてきた私。恋なんて絶対にしないと思ってた。
Having betrayed God for love, she devoted herself to the protagonist.
なのにあなたは私以外の女にも目を向けるなんて。
The protagonist later awakens inside the temple, with his body movement sealed.
もうあなたに危害を加えるつもりはないから。さっきは少し気が動転してしまったけれど。
She reveals Sakuya had already died by a curse she put on her and proceeded to perform a ritual to purify the protagonist with her weapon of choice, what she calls a holy blade.
この神社に伝わる神道、世持平坂。現世を断ち切り、死者の国ではなく、神のもとへと誘ってくれる。
And so, after saving him, she would follow along as well.
だから今はおやすみなさい。
Little bit of deviations here. Apparently, the producer specifically asked for Kono Hiromi to voice the character because he really liked Kogami Akira. Also, she's a shrine maiden because he was really into Toho at the time. The third story features two heroines. They are the twins Nana and Nono, who are voiced by Kaneda Tomoko and Aoki Sayaka. They're two young girls who the protagonist found playing in a park and was invited to take part in it. But after being requested to keep playing with them for a few days, he had something to do one day and wouldn't be able to keep them company. Their story begins with them in front of his house, calling him to play with them.
お兄ちゃん、どうして出てこないの？ナナたちと遊んでよ。最近全然遊んでくれないじゃないか。ナナたちが誘っても逃げてばっかり。
But the protagonist refuses, which they don't really take seriously.
そんなの嘘に決まってるじゃない。お兄ちゃんがナナたちと遊ばないなんて。そうだよね。危うく騙されるところだったよ。
So they break into the house with Nana's weapon of choice, an actual axe.
確かめるしかないよね。さすがナナの斧は破壊力抜群だね。
And so begins a hellish game of tag, with Nono bringing out her weapon of choice, a combat knife. Killing the next story's heroine along the way, they find the protagonist cowering in a bathroom stall in the park, and so ends the game of tag.
お兄ちゃん、見つけたわ。
Their type of love is more like loving a toy that you like being rough with, I guess. By the way, if their designs feel familiar, the producer explicitly requested it to be based on The Twins That Kill a Lot and The Doll Twins. The last story stars Takanashi Yumemi, played by Hirohashi Ryo, who also played Ayase on the first CD. She is the protagonist's younger cousin, who he knows since they were kids. She's infatuated with him, waking him up in the morning, doing house chores, cooking, and alike. She seems to want to live together with him. At the end of her pre-story, it's revealed that she's a stalker who is obsessed with the protagonist and loves taking secret pictures of him. Her story begins with the protagonist already running away, while she chases him with her weapon of choice, scissors.
お兄ちゃん、どうして逃げるのかな？ 別にお兄ちゃんにひどいことしようなんて全然思ってないのに。
And that is due to the protagonist seeing her killing Sakuya.
大丈夫、お兄ちゃんに手伝ってなんて言わないし、後片付けはもう慣れてるから。
She then reveals that she had already dealt with Iori and the twins.
だってもう4人目なんだよ。最初はいつも神社でお兄ちゃんを待ち伏せしてた巫女だったかな。あのうるさい双子を私の部屋に連れてきて2人まとめて片付けちゃった。
Yumemi then finally gets to the protagonist.
私のこと怖い？そう、怖いんだ。私が怖い？お兄ちゃんのために何でもやってきた私が。そんなわけないじゃない！お兄ちゃんは私のもの。お兄ちゃんは私を好きにならなくちゃいけないの。お兄ちゃんは私から逃げちゃいけないの。わかるかな？わかるよね。わかったら返事くらいしなさいよ。
I'm scared. So she confines the protagonist into her room that's covered in pictures she took of him.
この部屋にはお兄ちゃんとの思い出がたくさん詰まってるの。ここでお兄ちゃんと一緒に暮らせるなんて。私も気絶しそう。
But in the end, she still has to deal with some people to achieve her objective of them living together, just the two of them.
あと山なのはおじさんとおばさんだけだよね。
And with this, the second CD ends. There sure is no proper girl around the protagonist, huh? Takanashi Yumemi comes back on an extra CD that came along a box containing the first Nemurenai CDs. However, this one is played fully as a comedy CD, as it also features a clumsy little sister from a previous CD.
そうやってお兄ちゃんと夫婦みたいな真似してるところ、私に見せつけようとして。夫婦ですか？何よ！エプロンなんかして包丁持っちゃって！血の繋がった兄弟のくせに若奥さん気取り！ああ、そうですか！そっちがその気ならいいじゃない。その喧嘩勝ってあげるわ！どうしたんですか、ゆみみちゃん！
A bit over a year later, the third YandereCD was released. Yandere-san, Yandere no onna no kou ni shin no hodo aisarete Nemurenai CD 3. San means free, but here it's written with a kanji that has a connotation such as disastrous or wretched. And you could say this CD was even more elaborate than previous ones. The first heroine is Sakuranomiya Elis, voiced by Kawaragi Shiho, who voiced Sonoko on the first CD. She's gentle, kind, and shy, and holds an inferiority complex towards her older sister, amplified by the time she had a crush on a boy and he seemed to be interested in her as well. But before anything could happen, Arisu confessed to him and they started going out. She ultimately blamed herself and her own personality, and was traumatized by this. But when the protagonist, a distant relative of them, appeared, she fell in love again and did her best to confess, which the protagonist accepted. The problem arises when the sister Arisu starts spending a lot of time with the protagonist, and the protagonist also doesn't seem to be that against it, and they were seemingly getting very close. Her story starts with her reminding the protagonist of a date they will be going to, but the protagonist suggests bringing her sister as well.
お姉様も一緒にですか?
A few days later, Erisu is distressed because
あの日、学校の裏庭でお兄様と抱き合ってるお姉様の姿を、見間違えるはずなんかない。私、これじゃあピエロだよね。私だけが状況を理解してないのかな。
Afraid that her sister is going to take the protagonist from her, Erisu confronts Arisu.
お願いです。私からお兄様を取らないで。何を言ってるの?
But when told she saw the two of them embracing each other,
目を そらさないでねえ。もううるさいわね。いい加減にしてよ。私が何をしようと勝手でしょ。
Feeling betrayed, Erisu brings out her weapon of choice, a good old knife.
私の話を聞いて。私の痛みを教えてやるんだから。
And so, on the day of her date, Arisu never ends up appearing.
邪魔者がいなくなった世界で二人だけの思い出たくさん作りましょう、お兄様。
The next story is of Yumia, also known as Type Sakuya A9, a maid android voiced by Mizuhara Kaoru, who the protagonist found in a junkyard. She had no memories and nowhere to go, so she accepted the protagonist as her new master. Yumia probably has the most elaborate backstory of all characters. She is an android created to mimic the memories and thoughts of Sakuya from YandereCD 2, because YandereCD 3 is actually set a few years after Yumemi's route, where she kills all the other girls including Sakuya. Her family retrieves her body and her grandfather is stricken with grief. He starts a top secret project to recreate Sakuya. The project didn't bear fruit, but what could be used from the research was repurposed to sell made androids for the rich, called Type Sakuya Series, which is actually why both their stories start similarly.
ほっぺたプニプニしたかったな。マスターのほっぺたをプニプニしたくなるのはロストメモリーと関係があるのかな。
The protagonist is happy to have a made android that's way over his means, and Yumia seems to be happy to have someone to serve. But then...
何かしら AI にノイズが。
she starts having war flashbacks.
じっとしていてください。すぐに傷の手当てを。トマト果汁および塩化ナトリウム。食塩。
The thing is, commercially available Type Sakuyas only went up to A6.
最終型の完成品 A9 として実戦投入されたユミアは来る日も来る日も敵対勢力殲滅のためにたくさんの人を殺してきました。
Her AI of being a maid that cares for people, clashing with being made to kill many people, plus having her previous master dying in front of her in the battlefield, made her run away. Determined to protect her new master, she will not let anyone hurt him anymore by making use of her weapons of choice, many different types of military weapons.
マスターの安全を脅かす朝倉智恵は365個の肉塊となって吹き飛びました。
But things are still not safe for her master.
まだ安心はできません。だって地球にはまだ69億もの人間がうごめいているんですもの。
So she performs an operation on him.
こんな手術すぐ終わっちゃいますよ。大丈夫大丈夫。
And now, the protagonist, as an undying, decapitated head, lives connected to Yumia as she sets to create a world where only the two of them are left.
これから二人だけの時間が文字通り無限に続くのですから。
The next heroine is the protagonist's girlfriend, Asakura Tomoe, voiced by Shimoda Asami, who was apparently requested to voice the character because the producer liked how she played the Futami twins in Idolmaster. On the pre-story, Tomoe was the protagonist's junior on their part-time, who would drink out of his bottles or bury her face on his used uniforms. Tomoe confesses to the protagonist, and after they go on a date, the usual truck appears and Tomoe pushes him out of the way. During the commotion, and with Tomoe being hurt, the protagonist accepts her feelings as the ambulance arrives. So in their story, they're going on an amusement park for a date.
今日は先輩がフェアリーワールドに誘ってくれてすっごく嬉しかった。
On the Ferris wheel, the mood starts getting pretty nice.
もう急に抱っこなんて反則だよ。
And then it starts getting even nicer.
先輩の手が僕の胸に。ダメ先輩、それは展開早すぎ。
But then,
もうダメだったら。しまった、ウィッグが。髪じゃなくて、これは胸パッドかな。
Asakura Tomoe is a boy.
ごめんなさい、嘘をつくつもりはなかったの。本当だよ先輩。
I feel like Tomoe could have been forgiven if she kept her mouth shut.
先輩を思う気持ちは本物だよ。先輩の髪の毛も切った爪だってなくさないように。ほら、これは先輩が飲んだ後捨てたペットボトル。今日キスできるかもと思ってこれで練習してたの。
And so the protagonist runs away. An even bigger issue than that is that Tomoe is attracted to the protagonist because she believes they were lovers on a past life where she had a woman's body.
牽制エルシオンアクアライト。僕は魔法剣士ティアラティーナ・ルーネイと。僕たちは永遠の愛を誓い合った恋人同士だったんだよ。
Tomoe notices that the protagonist doesn't believe her, so as a last resort, she takes out her weapon of choice, the holy sword Lavatane.
危険な賭けだけど、真剣なリ力を直接先輩のアストラルボディに流し込んで覚醒を流そう。少しだけじっとしてて先輩。
The protagonist runs away, but Tomoe has a tracking device on him.
ああ、メイドロイドならもういないよ。だってほら。嘘、まだ滅んでなかったの。
He manages to escape while this is happening, but it's only a matter of time till Tomoe finds him again.
そういえば前世でも僕が追いかけて追いかけて追いかけて、やっとエルシオンに振り向いてもらえたんだよね。
It's actually kinda interesting because it is actually possible that Tomoe's delusions are real. Magic might be real in this universe, which helped when she got run over by a truck. Awakened Yumia also had some problems dealing with Tomoe.
朝倉巴は人間にしては信じがたい戦闘能力を持っていましたが、汎用人型戦略兵器 A7 以降の究極型であるアルティメット9のユーミアに勝てる道理はありません。
The explanation given by the producer is that Tomoe had a sister called Kanade, who was much more dangerous, and Tomoe received training from her. That sister later appeared in a Yumia after story, a puppeteer seeking revenge against Yumia. The story was not finished, however. Kanade was also one of the heroines of another voice drama called Rabubato that was produced at about the same time. Now, for the last story of Yandere 3, Sakuranomiya Alice, the sister of Sakuranomiya Elis, voiced by Mizuhashi Kaori. The story follows the same path of Erisu's story. Erisu dates the protagonist, Arisu approaches him, and they even seem to have something resembling a secret relationship, while she acts like a tsundere.
誰が恋人同士を勝手に決めつけないでよね。別にあんたが好きだからキスしたんじゃないんだからね。
Erisu feels betrayed, but this time, when confronting Arisu,
しまいなさいよ、そんな危ないもの。ひどいお姉様、嘘ばっかりのお姉様。
unable to endure being betrayed by her sister, but unable to hate her as well.
でも私、そんなお姉様を嫌いになれないの。ダメ、エリス、やめて。
Erisu plunges the knife into herself.
あいつさえいなければこんなことには許さない。
Later, Arisu confronts the protagonist.
そっか、そんなにも私のことが好きなんだ。じゃあエリスとのことは遊びだったってわけ？
And she takes out her weapon of choice, a 9-iron golf club, and slams him in the head.
私はゴルフなんてやらないわよ。これはね、こうやって使うのよ。
And now, restrained in her basement, she reviews what actually happened.
エリスに害虫が近づかないように体を張って守ってただけ。
Her love was directed at her sister this whole time. She would charm boys who would approach her sister and later deal with them. That first guy who Arisu stole from Erisu, killed by Arisu, and she only endured going out with him for a month because she was thinking on how to get rid of him.
今回も同じようにうまくいくと思ったのに。でもあんたたちみたいなゴミのせいでエリスは遠いところに行ってしまった。
And her tsundere act?
別にあんたのためじゃないんだからねって。すべてはエリスのためだったのよ。
But now, with Erisu gone, in a fit of rage, Arisu would bludgeon the protagonist to death and soon go meet her sister herself.
私もすぐに行くよ。もう絶対誰にも渡さないからね。
And that is how YandereCD 3 ends. Just as a quick mention, apparently the producer specifically chose her weapon to be a 9-iron club due to a certain ice fairy, and Yumia's name is based on a certain darkness yokai. So after a few years of silence, at the end of 2016, they released YandereCD Rebirth. And the first heroine is...
みんなのラブリーシスター、なぎさちゃんが帰ってきましたよ。この9年の間に某動画サイトですっごくたくさんの人たちとお話ししたような気がするんだけど、私の気のせいかな。
Yes, our favorite yandere little sister returned, a little bit more grown up. But according to the producer, this Nagisa is different from the past one. What happened on the first CD were nightmares she's been having for about 10 years. Nightmares where she kills her beloved Oni-chan, and once in a while she would have dreams where she was killed by other girls. This Nagisa, however, has a different uniform and a muffler that she received as a gift from her Oni-chan. I'm going to go real fast on this one, but Nagisa is stuck between her love for her Oni-chan and the fact that she's her sister, so she suggests being pretend lovers.
好きなタイプとかはこんな人がいいなとか。私みたいな子ってお兄ちゃん、それってよかったら恋人ができた時に備えて私と2人で練習をしない？
That is stopped when his childhood friend, Kuchinashi Ayako, who he exchanged promises to marry with when they were little, fully believing those words for about 10 years, she pushes him into a relationship with her.
それなら綾子さんとはまた前の関係に戻ればいいんじゃないかな。単なるご近所さんに戻るってことで、ちゃんと事情を話せば分かってくれるはず。綾子さん、絶対に別れないって言ってるんだ。分かった。私に任せて。
On Nagisa's route, she specifically deals with her by confining her, keeping her out of the way, so she and her Oni-chan can be happy together. And it's interesting because he seems to be fine with this, because he didn't want to be in relationship with Ayako and seemed to be fine to be with Nagisa.
そう言ってもらえると朝から頑張ってよかったって思えるよ。おかわりもあるからどんどん食べてね。
And she uses her trusted knife to deal with Ayako.
綾子さんの方もこれで刺されたのがトラウマになってるみたいで、見るとビクってするんだよ。綾子さん、うるさいですよ。
On Ayako's route, it's rather clear the protagonist doesn't want to be in this relationship.
本当は渚ちゃんと恋人になりたいと思っているとか。違いますよね。だったら私の提案を 拒否する理由はないと思いますが、私との約束を守ってくれるんですよね。ねえ、ねえ、ねえ、ねえ、ねえ、ねえ、聞いてるの？もしそうじゃないなら、そうじゃないなんて言うなら、私は
And then they all come face to face.
兄弟では結婚もできない。
結婚なんかできなくても、愛があれば何がおかしいのよ。
二人の間にあるのは家族愛ですよ。
She tells the protagonist to talk to Nagisa about their relationship, but
忘れていた。私が言うまでずっとどういうことですか？
which leads to Nagisa making fun of Ayako.
綾子さんだって思い込みでお兄ちゃんに付きまとっていただけじゃない。人の間違いを指摘する前に自分の間違いに気づくべきだったんじゃないですか？
Which then leads to
さっさと出て行って。
Ayako slamming Nagisa in the head with her weapon of choice, a frying pan. It didn't really sound much like one, but I think it is. And with no one between them, she asks the protagonist if he'll make her his wife.
お嫁さんにしてくれますよね？はっきり話せと言っているでしょ。返事は、はいかいいえで答えなさい。
And so, the protagonist and Ayase become engaged.
私がなぎさちゃんの分まで頑張りますから、素敵な家庭を作りましょうね。
What I find interesting on this one is that on Nagisa's pre-story, she starts wondering if her dreams are actually some sort of warning, and Ayako's characters seem to be purposefully made to be a mix of Ayase and Sonoko, being a quiet childhood friend. After that, Edge Records went down, but further yandere audio dramas were released in ASMR form, with the 7th YandereCD released just this year, January 2026. However, I'm setting off a cutoff point here because honestly, I was more interested in learning about what it did many years ago. But other characters from the first 3 voice dramas, although not to the point of Nagisa, they also had their fair share of popularity as well. And so, this series managed to make its mark on yandere history and on Niconico Douga history as well, a side that's more well known of. And to this day, it has edits where the yandere little sister have random conversations with many different people. That is all I have to say. If you enjoy my videos, please consider supporting on Patreon. This video was a suggestion by a viewer who later became a patron, but I promise I take suggestions in the comments from everyone. It's just a matter of when I'll get to them. I will now thank all of my patrons. Thank you Dark Rose, thank you Vederepi, thank you Fro116, thank you Aldope, thank you Resseis, thank you Salty Taro, thank you Nephrite Dragonfruit, thank you Alari, thank you Octavian Mihai, thank you A Friendly Danger, thank you MeowMix64, thank you Claudia Kaplan, thank you Sauce, thank you Gangsan, thank you Hobby Anon, thank you Vic Boss, thank you Sat, thank you Lime Phoenix, thank you Titan, thank you Vor, thank you thank you Aotie, thank you Ultra Cat Flap, thank you Weissehell, thank you Gillice Here, thank you Rocky, thank you Moon Bunny, and thank you Melmon. If I mispronounce your name, please do not stab me.